Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and compare the iPhone XS and the iPhone 14 Pro and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, you can definitely tell there are a few key differences for sure. On the front of the iPhone XS, we have a pretty decent 5.8-inch Super Retina OLED display, and it's not that bad of a panel. I think it still looks fairly good for the most part. And although this phone did come out back in 2018, it doesn't really seem too outdated, mostly because when you look at the iPhone 14s, they kind of have the same styling, a little bit of bezel around it, but with the notch up top, seems a little bit outdated. But when we look at the iPhone 14 Pro, it definitely looks a little bit newer, but it also, it's a little bit of a different type of phone. The 14 Pro has a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED panel, so it's an overall bigger panel, so keep that in mind. It's not the same size, although the phones feel roughly around the same size, mostly because the lack of bezel on the iPhone 14 Pro. We also have a dynamic island display rather than the notch on the iPhone XS, but to be honest, they are still kind of the same thing until we get like a small hole punch or something. Then it'll be a little bit different, but until that day, it's still kind of the same thing, to be honest. Now, in terms of thickness and thickness, it's also kind of the same thing. Not really. The iPhone 14 Pro is a little bit of a thicker phone. It's also a huge camera module that sticks out in the back. With my XS, it also sticks out a little bit. You can't really tell because I have a skin on the back, but definitely the XS also sticks out, so it's not just bad on the iPhone 14 Pro. You have the same type of like metallic, like reflective material on both these phones, which looks and feels very, very premium. There's also is not a SIM card tray on the iPhone 14 Pro, well, where there was one on the iPhone XS. So that's kind of a cool thing. On the back, very different setups as well. So standard glass back on the XS. I do have a skin here, but we did have that standard, glass back on the iPhone XS. The 14 Pro has this frosted glass back, which looks very good. It looks probably one of the best backs out. I love this phone a lot. Since the 11 Pro, actually this was the last flagship to have that, standard glass back. Dual camera setup on the XS, triple camera setup on the iPhone 14 Pro with that LiDAR sensor. Wireless charging on both. We do have that MagSafe capability on the iPhone 14 Pro. We have 5G on the 14 Pro, crash detection, and emergency SOS satellite mode on the 14 Pro as well. So those are some cool things. But the XS, for the most part, still kind of keeps up with the iPhone 14 Pro. Definitely the 14 Pro is a much more premium feeling phone. It's also the better phone overall. But the XS doesn't seem super outdated in my opinion. So in terms of that, that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the actual longevity of both these phones, meaning how long these phones are going to last, most probably the XS is not going to last as long as the 14 Pro. This phone has maybe like 2 more years left in it, depending on what Apple's going to do. They could last it forever if they really wanted to, but I think with the 10, to give you some perspective, the XS is the second to the lowest supported iPhone lineups that are supported right now. So the 2017 iPhones are the lowest ones. The 2018 ones are the next ones up. So realistically speaking, we probably have like another 2-3 years left. 3 years if we're lucky. It's probably going to be 2 years. Or when we look at the iPhone 14 Pro, this phone is just getting started. This phone literally just came out. So this thing has a massive, huge, runway ahead of it. And so this thing is going to be here for a long time. The XS, is still here for the time being. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. But definitely when it comes down to it, the 14 Pro is definitely going to be the one that's going to be here for much, much longer. So that kind of covers it up there too. Now let's go and do a speed comparison between both these phones. The iPhone 14 Pro has that Apple A16 Bionic chip inside of it with 6 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone XS has that Apple A12 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM. So let's go see which one is the faster one between both. Okay, there we go. All the apps are clear out in the background except for this one. Now the 14 Pro is on the left, iPhone XS is on the right. Let's get into it. Phone calls 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go and get into music 3, 2, 1. Two different pop-ups on both. I'll just click here for the time being. It probably was still going to be faster on the 14 Pro. Probably not this much faster, but we'll just keep that in the background. Settings, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go and get into health, which I don't have here. Let's go and get into news, 3, 2, 1. Okay, two different pop-ups on both. So we'll just go and hop out of this one. Podcasts. Let's go into mail, 3, 2, 1. A little bit of a delay on the XS, but not that big of a deal. Notes, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go and hop out of this one. Let's go and get into clock, 3, 2, 1. Let's go and get into camera, 3, 2, 1. Faster on the 14 Pro. Let's take a photo. Did take a longer time on the iPhone XS as well. Let's go and open up that photo. And again, those little tiny things are what's going to be noticeable in the long term. Even scrolling out, let's go and kind of get into some of the UI elements. It's probably going to be faster on the 14 Pro. You're also getting a ProMotion display on the iPhone 14 Pro at 120 Hz, which makes things look and perform that much better, which is so awesome. I think I forgot to mention that in the beginning with. As always, we have a couple of these third-party applications we can go and open up. Let's try Twitter. 3, 2, 1. I mean, even on this application was big difference. Snake versus block, 3, 2, 1. And again, the 14 Pro was the faster one. Let's go and get into Netflix, 3, 2, 1. 14 Pro again, I mean, it's going to be a lot faster. Thank you, 3, 2, 1. And again, the 14 Pro is faster. 10x a little bit behind. Facebook, 3, 2, 1. Okay, 14 Pro again is the faster one. Stack, 3, 2, 1. And we can see the 14 Pro didn't even glitch on the 14 Pro, where it glitched a little bit on the 10s. Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. And even in this case, I think the 14 Pro is going to be the faster one again. I mean, this is a pretty big difference. A few glitches here and there on the 10s as well. And this isn't even that big of a game, if I'm being honest. Like, not that intensive of a game. Hopping out of this one. Let's try Genshin Impact. This is a pretty big game, 3, 2, 1. And I played this game on both. I will say, for a lot of these games with these, higher end graphics, you can tailor the graphics down or up. So even between these two, this opening up the game is probably the bigger difference here, rather than even the actual gameplay, because these games, you can tailor the graphics down, but on higher end graphics, definitely the 14 Pro is going to be a much better game here. And you can even see here, I mean, the 10s is not a slow phone, but definitely compared to the latest one, you are getting some speed increases for sure. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in terms of the camera setups between both, like I mentioned earlier, triple camera setup on the iPhone 14 Pro, wide ultra-wide telephoto lens. The 10s, we only had a wide and telephoto lens. We can do 4K at 60 on the back, we can do 1080p on the front of the iPhone 10s, but we can do 4K at 60 on the front of the iPhone 14 Pro, which in my opinion is like kind of standard now. So for the 10s, not having it, I mean, back in 2018, okay, whatever, but now, I mean, it is kind of a cool thing to have. Now, in terms of this camera setup, what I will tell you is it's not a bad camera. It's really not that bad of a camera. It can take photos and videos whichever way you want to. It's lacking a few things. So you have 10x. I don't even know what's going on here. You have 10x zoom, which is great. So keep that in mind. There's no 0.5x zoom. So again, no ultra wide lens here. You still have standard camera mode. So you still have video mode, portrait mode. The iPhone 14 Pro has a little bit more up its sleeve. But I will say, for this type of camera, it's not bad. If you're just taking Snapchats and TikToks, then it's going to be perfectly fine. But if you're going to want to take it up a notch, something like the iPhone 14 Pro is definitely going to be the better one for sure. This thing has a way better camera setup on the back. And I mean, even beyond just the camera, I mean, this thing has a lot more features built in it itself. Now you have 15x zoom over the 10x zoom on the 10s, and you have 0.5x zoom where you only have 1x zoom on the iPhone 10s as well. So you are getting way more capability on this camera. You're also getting 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which is nice. And you're also getting cinematic mode, which is awesome. And I think we can do 4K at 60 now at cinematic mode, or at least 4K at 30. So we can do 4K at 30, we can do 4K at 24 in cinematic mode. So that is another really cool thing. We have a lot more features and a lot more capability built into the 14 Pro as well. So when it comes down to it, and how I would kind of sum up this whole entire comparison, the 14 Pro is definitely the better phone. It's kind of better over the 10s in every single area. Better battery life, better performance, better display, ProMotion. Performance is going to be better. Like, everything is going to be better. Better cameras. Like, this phone has it all. And for $1,000, I mean, it's not a cheap phone, but it's a better phone for sure. If you want to save some money, probably the 10s is the better way to go. But even then, I would recommend going for something like an iPhone 11 Pro if you really want to save some money. Going from a 10s to 11 Pro is also a really big upgrade in my opinion. So, but definitely between these two, 10s is still an okay phone, but definitely the 14 Pro is much better. This is a really good upgrade. I would say going from a 10s to a 13 Pro would also be a really big upgrade. So if you want to save some money, you can go for the 11 Pro, the 13 Pro, or you can go for the 14 Pro. I think it's definitely a good upgrade for sure. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, so let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that means so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.